See that.
We'll call the Tuesday, June 18th, 2024 Select Board meeting to order. First on the agenda is reorganization. Elect chair. Is there a motion for a chair?
I'll make a,
Oh, look at the big fight on who we're gonna nominate.
I'll make a motion for chair to be Rick Cassiotis.
I'll second.
And I'll third that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Rick, we'll switch seats.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, first things first, and we'll bring to order this evening. Whoop.
Clerk.
Do the clerk. Get an elected clerk.
I do clerk.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry about that. I'm ready to go. All right, can I have, now we have to have a change of clerk since I vacated that. Do we have a motion to nominate one of us for clerk?
I nominate Deb Carboni.
Second.
Okay. Deb's been nominated. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Thank you, Deb. That's a good clerk.
Thank you, Rick.
All right. All right, now we'll get on to this evening's business. First, we've all had a chance to read the minutes of May 22nd, 2024 open session and the May 23rd, 2024 executive session, and May 28th, 2024. Are those open session or executive session minutes on May 28th?
Open.
Open session, thank you. Need a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Town administrator with updates and reports, Justin.
Thank you. Would you like to do the warrant 2425?
It's the facilities.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can just circle back. Just
Oh,
circle.
you can do, go ahead.
All right,
so-
yeah,
so-
we would discuss the warrant
Sure,
for
thank you.
2425.
So just a quick summary, and I'll be brief for the sake of the people with us this evening. So you have warrant 2425 before you, dated June 13th, 2024. On the payroll side of things, totaling in $960,902. You'll see some overtime on there, excuse me, from Mel, the fire department, police. No snow, thankfully, given the time of year. Excuse me. On the bills payable side of things, totaling in at about $1.9 million. You'll see about $6,500 in attorney fees for the folks over at Mead, Tellerman, and Costa. $5,000 expense for Chief Will's Day, which is this upcoming Saturday. I'll be there, and I hope to see you there. On the DPW side of things, about $50,000 for the rail trail, $40,000 for the Peabody Street Bridge. And towards the bottom, which is making up a pretty significant chunk of this particular warrant, about $850,000 in a debt service payment. And there is no facilities project warrant at this time.
Okay, any questions?
I move to accept warrant 2425 as presented.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. All right, now, Justin, please, town administrator updates and reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few items to highlight. I just wanted to thank, real quickly, our town assessor, Brad Swanson, who is stepping down from his post as facilities manager at the end of this month. It was a stipended additional position. He's staying on as assessor, don't worry. But he has really helped this community get through some of our maintenance needs when our organization realistically was a much smaller size. Brad's been with us for some time now. And as the town has grown, it's really become a little bit of a thing of its own. So thank you to Brad for helping us get to this point. As a reminder, the transfer station will be open tomorrow, as well as from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Thursday and Friday. They shifted that a little bit to avoid the heat. The groundbreaking ceremony for the municipal complex was a huge success. We had an excellent turnout. I just wanted to thank the folks that helped plan that and execute it, as well as Assistant Town Administrator Bresnahan for coordinating a lot of the details. It was a really well-received event. The Memorial Putting Green has been put on hold at the new municipal complex out of concerns over the synthetic turf. Future plan is currently being cooked up, centering around a walking trail that would follow the historic location of the golf course holes on the site, which seemed like a good use of the passive recreation there. things are moving along at the Fuller Meadow parking lot changes that we're seeing here at this school. In anticipation of the parking lot closing at the new municipal complex, we are trying to rework the space we have here to make it more conducive for queuing and parking, and so that's ongoing. I've been participating in the Masco teachers bargaining sessions as the town administrative representative between Topsfield, Boxford, and here in Middleton. It's going well, and we're looking to strike a deal hopefully sometime this month or midsummer. I had a conversation with MassDOT this week. The dedicated left arrow at Route 114 and 62 has been approved, and they're going to be out in July to inspect the current mast arm. They just want to make sure that as it presently stands in the field, it can support the weight of new signal heads, but it's officially a go. It's a slow process, so thank you for your patience. We had a productive meeting last week for the bottleneck reduction grant in the Central and Washington Street area. I want to thank the residents that came out for that, as well as the engineer at Niche Engineering, our DPW director, Paul Goodwin, as well as some board and committee members that were there as well. It was a good conversation. And then just a note, given the proximity of the holiday where it falls on the calendar, I'm proposing the closing of town buildings where appropriate on the 5th of July, particularly in Town Hall where it's a half day. So if that's agreeable with the board, we're going to go ahead and post notices on the doors as well as on the town website. And then lastly, I just wanted to make a quick note with the changing of the guard here, just to thank Selectman Garber for his partnership and collaboration over the last year, particularly for me transitioning in a new community. He was an invaluable resource in terms of learning the ropes, so I appreciate that, and thank you for the soft landing in Middleton.
It's great working with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And that's everything for now.
Thank you.
As the fiscal year is coming to an end, the statistics that our departments keep, and oftentimes we only see those at budget season. So could we start with July, giving us the stats from each department, the stats that they normally keep anyway, and then every quarter, at the end of every quarter, give us stats. So we are seeing them.
Building permits process and things like that.
How many fire department runs, whether they for ambulance or for other things, any police activity, just the stats that they normally keep. I think it would be better for us to see them on like a quarterly basis.
Number of permits, number of inspections.
Sure.
Over in the building commission.
So maybe what I'll do is I'll draft up a stat sheet that will have 15 or 20 just standing metrics, not getting into the weeds, but high level. And then those 15 or 20 things we can just update, like you said, quarterly. We'll bring it forward, just run through them, compare them, chart them, graph them.
So like for the first quarter of the fiscal year, what they were. Then at the end of the second quarter, okay, what was the second quarter stats? What's the year-to-date stats?
Sure. We can put that together.
Thank you.
The other thing with it, relates to Masco. I think there is a need to work with them and with our other towns, to determine best ways forward on the capital needs. So I'm going to suggest that, I've had conversations with the chair and co-chair of the Masco School Committee, about that same thing. They're considering trying to reactivate sort of a mechanism that existed 4 or 5 years ago that led to that. You and I have also talked about, perhaps getting, with the other towns, kind of discussions about how we can coordinate and best be helpful to moving the process forward. So I would ask this board to appoint one of us as sort of the official representative on those discussions, wherever and however they take place.
Yeah, I think one of the best items that can happen over the summer is I'd recommend a meeting of the 3 town administrators, 3 select board members from each town, one from each town, finance committee representative from each town, and a member of the Masco School Committee from each town, along with both the superintendent and the assistant superintendent for finance and operations. And, so there will be no miscommunication, no misunderstanding of the path forward. I think there's been some misguided complaints by other towns or town of Middleton's decision at town meeting to overwhelmingly reject the override and the voters to overwhelmingly reject the override for the project at Masco. And the best way to overcome an issue like that is through communication. So you've been extremely communicative with the two other towns as well as the administration, but I think it makes sense at this point, rather than at the 11th hour, like unfortunately we had to do that leading up to town meeting activity, to actually do so. And with Masco getting ready to appoint at a future meeting their building committee, what will be their permanent building committee, I can't think of a better time for the three towns to actually get together, sit down at a table, and actually have a conversation, especially over the summer. So I think you're dead right on that. And I would offer, if the board was comfortable, I'd love to be that representative, but if you think otherwise, that's fine as well.
Can I just respectfully, just remember that the AC is on behind you and you need to speak up tonight because of that, so that everyone in the back can hear you.
Okay, we're definitely not turning the air conditioning off.
No, we're not, so just, if you could sing out, that'd be great.
And I would add to that sentiment that I did reach out last week and initiate with the other two administrators in Boxfield and Tossfield, and we're going to meet midday next week to talk a little bit about the path forward. And I think this is productive feedback that I can bring to that meeting and communicate to them and see if their communities are willing to mirror what you're all describing that we're going to do here in Middleton.
Agree.
Great. So just so I get this, so we're looking for 3 select board members, or
One.
one?
One.
Okay.
One from each town.
So, I'm also.
You have interest?
Happy, to do it, but, I think either one of us would be.
Would be effective. No,
Yes.
Then I would ask for we can get a nomination for either Brian.
Does the
or-
committee need to be, we don't know if it's going to happen, do we nominate someone now or wait to see if it's really going to happen?
This is of your own creation. So I think if you want to nominate.
It doesn't have to be formal.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
Put a foot forward, I think, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the other towns will be open to that discussion. I would expect they would be. I surely would hope the administration over at Masco would be open to the discussion, so.
So maybe I can bounce it off the other two communities. You all can chew on it, and then at your next meeting on July 9th, you can vote for somebody. That makes sense?
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. Okay.
Because if the other two towns aren't willing to join forces, then we don't have a committee.
I mean, there are other issues besides capital that would be helpful to discuss and resolve in ways that help all 4 entities, the 3 towns in Masco. So, not necessarily.
Especially as we
limited to
saw, at
capital.
least through the process this year, it seems that Masco is coming with a multi-year process asking for overrides for capital needs over there. And I don't think this is a discussion that could be done piecemeal, like, oh, well, this is what we've done this year, and then let's start the conversation for next year. You're just going to have the same problem all over again.
Yeah, and I think just to reiterate an important point that came up in your last meeting, because I don't want it to get missed, is that the time to start talking about that roof was about 2 to 3 weeks ago. It's not next March. There's not enough lead time there. And so if they want to have a serious conversation about this, the time is now.
And also, we have a large number of residents that live in our condo, so it's about 1,000 of them. And most of those residents did not raise their kids in Middleton. They moved from other communities, and they may not even know what Masco is. So I think it's incumbent on the school committee to educate sort of those residents as to what Masco is, what it does, and it does a lot of wonderful things, as well as educating all of us on the state of their facility, and for instance, we just learned, at the end of the budget cycle, as we're getting ready for town meeting, that over last summer, some of the air handling units caught on fire. They should have been telling us that immediately after it happened, and keep repeating it so it sinks in, because people that have been in Middleton for a while still think that Masco is a brand new building.
Okay. All good points. All right, then you'll get back to us in a reasonable amount of time, Justin, on that. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, if at this point of the night, we ask for if anyone present has a public comment they'd like to make. We only request that the public comment not contain any items we already have on the agenda, so that we can always address those concerns at that time. So, do we have anyone for public comment?
I do. So this is alluding to the bottleneck grant. I know there's a,
Just we know we
sure.
We know who you are, maybe others here may not.
yeah, sure. Purvi Mithil, 34 Central Street. I was just wanted to have a comment related to the bottleneck grant. Want to thank you for the progress towards speed calming measures and all the effort that's been put towards that on Central and Washington. I just wanted, I guess, point of question clarification on that, and that can be another agenda item at another time. I know you have a full one today, but you mentioned that this would be a phased approach because there are some elements of the design that either weren't within the scope of the bottleneck grant, or kind of wanted to put some implementations in and then see how that went. Would that be like a second phase of the bottleneck grant, or is whatever we're accepting now like the full funding that we could get? And then if not, would that come from the coffers that you alluded to in the April 9th meeting, those additional phases of the speed calming measure?
So this first phase would be paid for through that grant program and would be fully expended through that grant program.
Okay.
So anything that comes after, if there is a phase 2, if there's an appetite for phase 2, or if it's determined that there's a need for phase 2, we would have to identify separate funding sources. It could be us going out and trying to identify grants that we could link up to that need, and pulling it off a second time. It could be a town meeting appropriation. It could be if there's any ARPA money rolling around that gets turned back.
Could it be Chapter 90 dollars?
That could be Chapter 90 money, depending on what the specific remedy is. So.
Okay, because I know there were elements of the design that, for whatever reason, were eliminated from the scope of the grant. So, I think, kind of as we talked about, the full package would probably be the most effective, but I know we want to do this in a phased approach, right? So that, and then if we could, I guess, make a commitment on the assessment. We talked about kind of reassessing once everything was implemented, and I know there's some play in when that actual construction will be, but could that be like within 3 to 6 months of implementation? I think that probably gives part of the school year. So if we could, I guess, just align a schedule, that would be good. And again, we don't have to discuss it now, but I think if we can make a commitment for that reassessment, just to make sure it's on everyone's radar, I think that would be helpful to kind of keep that process moving.
Sure. So I don't want to speak for the board, but I think it would be early to make that commitment. I'd say at minimum you'd want to get 4 seasons under your belt to see how the suggested remedies that we're implementing react through snow season, through the end of school in the summer. And then I would say if a need is determined, we can kind of dive into it at that point, if that makes sense. If you want to pick a date, say bring it up again next spring, like in April, sometime in April, maybe. Does that make sense?
And then I guess in that sort of evolving iteration of it, like, would it make sense to have like a touch point at the end of each season to say, like, this is good for spring and this is good for summer, and then winter obviously has different challenges, right? But maybe just to kind of keep touch points on what worked and what didn't work. I mean, understanding a formal assessment might be better after 4 seasons, but just sort of an informal touch point.
If I could, I think there's still a phase of what we want to watch and see how, what we do happens.
Yep.
And then,
No, I'm just asking for
as
the-
a need is required, we'll clearly respond to it.
Right,
We
right,
want
right.
to see how it works out as
And
well.
this is what I'm talking about. So, like, when we're looking to see how did it work, like, just sort of that assessment, like, okay, how did it work in the spring, right? Like, so just kind of gathering that feedback and data, like whether it's through the school, visitors, people going to, however you want to gather that information, but just kind of making sure you're getting it real time, because people forget, like, you know, every day they're doing something different, so, but yeah, that's it, thanks.
So that's a yes. 32 Central Street, Ann Kuchar. That's a yes. We're going to assess it after each season, and then cumulatively at the end of the year,
In the
you know,
spring.
take it all, the spring, take it all together, and we're going to, because it does have unique sessions of what's going on there. So we are in agreement that after each season, we'll have an assessment, and then
Sure.
at the end of the year,
If we
bring
can
it all
have an agreement
forward.
that we're also going to watch it as it develops and
Oh,
as it
absolutely.
goes.
And
I
who's
mean,
watching
you know,
it,
At the
may
same
I
time,
ask?
I don't want to, okay? Yeah.
But who's going to be the gatekeeper of watching it? Who's going to assess watching? Is it the neighbors? Who is it that's
So-
doing that?
so-
Because we have been in conversation with you for a long time, the neighborhood. I say we collectively as the neighborhood, and I think that, Justin, you saw that last week when we got together, that collectively we are, even though you see our faces all the time. How is that going to be monitored?
Yeah, so I'd say, you know, in the sake of fairness, we assess every road in town annually. Do we give that particular neighborhood a little bit of extra attention? Absolutely. And so I think in the spirit of that, we haven't even bid out phase one, let alone built it. So let's take this one step at a time. We'll see where it goes. We're not going to leave you hanging out there. Rest assured, I think if we didn't follow up, you'd find us anyway. So let's build it. We'll see how it goes, and we'll go from there.
Step at a time. I absolutely agree with everything, and I really appreciate all the efforts we have made. And Jeff, you get kudos. And Katrina, I'm saying, even though she's no longer with us, for the bottleneck grant that even focused the attention to where it is. But I don't want to lose sight of it's not a one and a done because of some of the aspects of what has been taken out potentially could cause more problems in the neighborhood because of the jump into off of Washington and Central, so that this really isn't a one and done. I'd like to believe that it is, but the stepping is going to be important that we pay attention.
So I hope you've noticed something that's actually happened in the time that Justin's been here. While we've been working on this area in this neighborhood for some time, I think things moved much more rapidly.
Not disagreeing with that at all.
And I don't mean that in any disparaging way to any of the activities that happened before, but I want to give credit to Justin for how he, both with the team that he has, our former planner, now our current planner, our public works director, police, fire, everybody else involved. I think he's done a fabulous job of grabbing the bull by the horns and getting this moving. A lot of it was contingent upon the application process for the grant. I actually think we were more successful in the grant than I thought we were going to be.
I think collectively, everyone
yeah.
thought that it wouldn't actually come to
We're not
fruition.
disagreeing with any of it.
So what I mean by all of this is, I don't think once this is bid and construction is done, Justin's going to be like, well, that's done, moved on to another
Thank you.
thing.
That is what I
So
wanted to hear.
And to
No,
his point,
absolutely.
you guys know how to find him.
Well, and I mean, at the meeting too, we recognize, like, a lot of progress has been made in this last year, right? But we just want to make sure that we're
That
all
our
on the same
conversation
page.
is open
Yeah,
Yep.
that's all.
and fluid.
I think the whole board's on the same page with you.
Perfect, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you. So with that, the next item on the agenda is an appointment of a new full-time police officer, Ryan Duvall. And I don't know if we can have Mr. Duvall step up to the mic, identify himself, and I believe Chief Sampson will take over and inform us of the selection of Ryan Duvall.
How are you? I'm Ryan Duvall. Thank you for having me here today and giving me this opportunity to be in front of you and be appointed to this great department.
So Chief, can you tell us something about your recommendation?
Absolutely. We're proud to recommend Ryan. Ryan is born and raised in Middleton. He was a product of the Middleton school department. He got his undergraduate from Salem State. He has his master's degree from UMass Lowell. He was a standout athlete growing up. We conducted numerous oral interviews of the candidate pool that we had. Ryan came in on the top. He was also highly recommended from one of our officers, Officer DeChesney. He's well known there. We conducted a thorough background check, and we believe he has all the attributes, his academics, his physical fitness, to be a good police officer.
And will he need to go to the academy?
Yes. The plan is if he's appointed, he will be sent to the academy in late July. That's the next one that's coming up. We've completed everything that the requirements for post as of right now. Once the, if the recommendation goes through, he'll go through his pre-test, physical fitness test to prepare himself for the academy.
And you said you still have family lives in town? I know you
I do. I brought this army with me out here. Parents still live in town. All my lifelong friends still live in town. So, yeah, this town has given me my life. So,
That's great that you're back here and
Yep.
want to serve our town. That's awesome.
Yeah. Personally speaking, there comes a lot of, extra when you're from here. You know, you have a little more sense of loyalty, I think.
yeah, exactly. So,
Well, any other questions or
I do not.
discussion? No?
So if the
January.
end of July is when he's able to get into the academy, when would he be rolling on our streets?
Well, the academy lasts about 6 months, and then there's about a 16-week FTO program. So 8 months, he should be ready to roll.
Where's the academy in July?
April?
In April?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the appointment of Ryan Duval as a police officer. Now, all background checks have been completed.
Correct.
Okay, would this be contingent upon successful completion of the academy?
Correct. The start date, we usually start about a week before the academy, so we can get him acclimated into the town, kind of make sure all the uniforms, everything's where he needs to be, and then start the academy.
So, an appointment contingent also upon the successful completion of the academy at a time to begin
July 22nd.
July 22nd, 2023.
Or
24, going backwards here.
and through June 30th, 2025.
June 30th, 2025. Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, I'll second
second.
that.
All right, we got a motion and a second, and I want to point out, this is a replacement of a full-time officer, not
Right.
an addition to.
Correct. The retirement officer McParlin, this
Right.
would be his replacement.
You're filling big shoes.
Yeah,
Ready
ready for it.
So we have a motion and a couple seconds. If we can ask for all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? No, I will sustain for obvious reasons, I'm employed there. But good job.
Appreciate it.
Welcome to-
Thank you,
welcome to
everyone.
Middleton. All right, and next is another law enforcement related, and it's going to be presented to us by our own Officer Jordan Kemp, also a Middleton resident, on the acceptance of a donation of a street sign for Kucha Way from the Middleton Police Benevolent Association. The Middleton Police Union came up with this on their own and want to do this for the memory of
Sergeant
Eddie.
Kuchar.
Go ahead.
So we thought we'd take the time to design a nice sign to be mounted at the street. For most of us, it's a job we love, and he served it. He gave his life for it, and this is the smallest token we could think of that doesn't even meet what he deserves. But I think now that there's a street with his name on it, only a sign remembering him should go right with it.
Excellent.
I
You want to
agree.
show everybody else that?
So there's a saying that when you speak of somebody, the memory never ends, and it continues. When this board actually voted to name the street after Sergeant Kuchar, that's an awesome opportunity to continue the memory. But I think this sign ensures that those that will move into that neighborhood, visit that neighborhood, or drive by that neighborhood understand what Kuchar Way means. So I appreciate the association working with both the developer of the property, but also coming before the town and putting this forward. So this gives everybody the opportunity to continue to talk about the memory and keep the name fresh in our lips.
No, you did that. I'm sorry. I know you reached out, like you said, to the developer, to the DPW, to the family. you know, for you people to come up with that organically like that, you know, is, well, I told you what I thought.
So I'll move to accept the donation of the Middleton Police Benevolent Association of a street sign in memory of Sergeant Kuchar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimously.
Thank
Thank you very much. So you want to mention when? Plans that, you know, you want to have that.
We want to do an official unveiling on July 10th, the day he made his sacrifice. Time to be determined at now, but we will reach out to everyone when that time is locked down.
Can we ask at the public safety folks and Mrs. Kuchar if she's willing to take a photo in the hallway before you head out with the sign?
Absolutely.
I'm terrible at photos, but okay.
It's fine. You stand next to me. You look gorgeous.
I think that you and Rick should be.
It's all you.
I know you keep.
It's all you and them.
I know, forget all that, but I really do think that you too, especially this one.
Should I get up there?
Do you want to take a brief recess? We'll wait for
Sorry,
attorney
Brian,
comment.
it's just the way that it needs to be done.
Is there a motion for a recess? 5 minutes.
You as well. It's okay, look,
Make a motion for recess?
So moved.
look at me change a meeting.
Am I taking it for you?
Yes, it is a good thing, isn't it?
Elvis has entered the room.
I can call back to order the selectmen. Thank you for the brief recess for that. That was needed. Okay, now I know we had a decision on this before about going into executive session. Is that still the plan, or?
Is there an appetite for that from anybody on the board?
I think we
I think
kind of had
I'm
everything
good.
on the open.
I had a couple of questions. I could speak to them openly or an executive on the
I think
agreement.
we'll open, if the ones you mentioned, open is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I would ask if we are, ask our attorney if we are discussing something that should not be
That maybe I
open.
should
Please
defer
feel
to-
free to throw a flag.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would only be value, so strategy and around.
Okay, yeah, and where this has been pretty much out in the open anyway, so. All right, so we're going to forego item number 6 as far as it being going into executive session. And we'll ask Attorney Telemann, I guess, to tell us what do we got?
So I can tee it
Oh, I'm
up.
sorry.
I'll tee it up a little bit, no worries. So this has obviously been an ongoing negotiation. It was something that we really dug into in earnest. I want to say starting back in the fall, and it's been a long time coming. And so the purpose of this development agreement is it's an opportunity for the town to work with the developer to kind of shape the terms of what this project would potentially look like on the corner there of 114 and 62. And so over the course of that, Mr. Onium and myself have met with our attorneys, Attorney Tellerman and Attorney Smolak. Big thank you to each of them, and kind of volleyed back and forth probably 100 times or more, tweaking and fine-tuning this to make sure that it's in the town's best interest, but in such a way that it's not terribly disadvantageous to the developer as proposed. And so a huge thank you to Jay for his guidance and his work on this. And with that, I'll hand it over if you want to just give a high-level view.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so first of all, a lot of thanks and kudos to the hard work of the zoning board, which, because a lot of the minutia, which I think we can be less concerned with here, are because they really worked hard to make sure that the items regarding the mitigation, the non-easement related stuff, were in a form that could work for them and for the applicant. And also a lot of credit to Lars and to John. I mean, I've worked with a lot of developers. It's great when you get a cooperative group of developers. They've been really good and easy to work with here. I mean, they have their needs and we have ours, but they've been very cooperative to work with. So it's been a really good process. We've had to battle out a few issues here and there, but none of it has reached a fever pitch, and everyone has really worked in good faith on this. So I just want to tee that up for everyone. It's been a lot of work. So I think from, just to kind of go backwards to go forwards, we've got there's two kind of intersecting pieces of mitigation that we have here. This project, obviously, in a high visibility corner, it involves an area that is already under duress. I just driving in from Boston, I can attest to that. It needs some improvements. It needed improvements before this project was there. But with this project, there was an opportunity to shape a project that provides some benefits and redevelop something, get some mitigation for the project, but also works to address kind of an overarching need that the select board has championed since it's been 3 years now probably, of doing something to get us more pavement up there, more ability to manage that traffic there. So there's really two pieces of mitigation here, each with subparts, but from the zoning board's perspective, there was a lot of small component parts, signalization issues, sidewalk issues, internal circulation issues on both the commercial and the housing project that we're still working through, but we're pretty far down the road. And then there's the bigger picture stuff here, which is the select board as the entity that controls property ownership in the town, controls big public works projects or big roadway projects, working towards getting the easements from the developer here so that we could move towards widening the roads, but that was an essential piece to get that real estate interest out there. So this agreement has a lot of parts to it. A lot of it is reciting things that are going to go into both the comprehensive permit and the special permit for the commercial and the housing projects. They're repeated here for reference and to help kind of make sure we're all part of the same family of agreement, so to speak. But from a really high level view of this, it can be distilled kind of to its essence, which is if the developer gets the permits they want, more or less, and those, it's not what they wanted from the beginning. They have compromised every step of the way. They've changed the design. They've changed the flow pattern. They've made concessions. If they get the permits that they've bargained for during the zoning board processes, you get the easements. There's some things that we have to do as a select board too. We got to follow through, get the grants, get the funding for the roadway improvements for the intersection widening. But in its essence, all the hard work that has happened to date, from Justin to Jeff's contributed a lot of work as the now former chair.
Yeah.
Lars, John, Rich's crew, some of whom are here, have been leading towards the basic principle of good projects acceptable to the zoning board, permits issued, we get easements. So that's what this agreement says in a lot more words than that. And I'm sure that either Lars or someone else could give you the blow by blow on their traffic improvements here. They're kind of listed in bullet points on page 5 and elsewhere here, but that's essentially what we've come to here today.
Sure, and I don't know, Mr. Onyem, if you'd like to join us at the table or speak to it at all, as well as your attorney, but.
Thank you. Yes, Lars Onyem, Villbridge Acquisitions. I just would chorus, it has definitely been a long process, talking through a lot of complexity over the last year. But as Jay said and Justin has said, there's been a lot of collaboration and working hard together to figure out how to make this as productive and likelihood for success. And very excited about the Housing Works grant that the town has applied for. I think this could really be a great catalyst, which is always what we've had as a vision for this. It's always been to try and be something that was really additive to Middleton Square and to the town. So appreciate that very much. Not to get too much in the weeds, but the only thing I would just say is, even if the easements don't happen, we are doing more traffic mitigation than what's called for under mitigating our project. So that was part of our efforts this year was to try and say, above and beyond what's necessary, we want to do more, and then even more with pursuing this grant with the easements and the like. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's not we're only doing more if we get the permits and the easements. We've been trying to lean in every step of the way. So thank you.
Jeff, you,
I had a couple of questions, and I don't mean to nitpick it. It's a long document. It says in here that the agreement can be terminated, basically if you don't get all the relief on the commercial project that you're seeking. And that there hasn't been a decision made yet on the drive-through. Just wondering what's the ramifications if the ZBA were to deny the drive-through. We don't know, obviously, how they're going to rule on that because it hasn't been decided yet. So our question is, would that be something that is not getting one of the conditions on the commercial project that would make this terminatable? That's my question. I think for Jay or for you or for both.
I mean, I can speak to logistics. I don't want to speak for Lars on where he is on that particular discussion. It's ongoing.
Right, so my question is, if the ZBA chose not to grant the drive-through, would that mean that Lars could terminate the agreement? Because the agreement says it's contingent on all the special permit conditions that he's requesting on the commercial. So my question, I guess, to you, Jay, is if the ZBA were to deny the drive-through, could Lars say this agreement is terminated?
I think ostensibly he could. Again, he may be satisfied with the permit in other respects and agree to forego the drive-through and be what we call under the agreement reasonably satisfied, but he has
My question is, if he didn't get the drive-through but chose to go forward with the project without the drive-through, could he would have that approval without the drive-through, but then could he terminate this agreement because it'd say, well, because I'm building it without a drive-through, I could terminate this agreement? That's my question. I'm not saying he would walk away from the project if he didn't get the drive-through. I'm asking, if he didn't get the drive-through, chose to go forward with the project, the way this is worded, could he say, I'm going to terminate this agreement because I didn't get my drive-through?
So
That it would change this agreement.
Well, it says in the agreement if he
Well, it
doesn't
could
get...
eliminate.
It says,
It can terminate.
I can read it word for word what it says. It says...
So the bullet points that
Page
could,
13, on the bottom.
that could lead to Lars concluding that the project is not reasonably acceptable is that it would reduce the square footage of the project below the 20,000 square feet and below the commercial trips that they're trying to get, require significant modifications to the design of the project as submitted to the ZBA through the effective date of this agreement, or impose other mitigation requirements that are not established to be directly attributable to the impacts of the commercial project.
I think that paragraph contradicts paragraph P.
Paragraph which?
On page 13.
On page
Jay, down
13,
the
paragraph
bottom,
P, because it
the
doesn't,
very bottom.
it doesn't reference, it's a total separate paragraph that doesn't reference the one that you read. Where it says, the applicant shall have the right to terminate by written notice to the board this agreement. Is denied final approval of all requested relief for the housing project and/or the commercial project.
Yeah, I view paragraph P more as just if they're not going forward, if the final approvals aren't issued. It's more of a omnibus kind of, if you don't get the reasonable, acceptable language locks in if they want to keep going with the agreement here.
So I'm not an attorney, but I'm assuming all necessary final approvals doesn't mean that every request needs to be approved, because there needs to be some type of approval decision. The decision could be we accept A, B, and C, but not D, E, and F.
Well, final approvals is a defined term. I'm just trying to locate it here.
It says the word all, Brian. The word all was, it says the word all.
Well, it says all necessary final approvals.
All requested, on the bottom of page 13, it says all requested relief.
The applicant is denied final approval of all requested relief.
Right, so obviously if they can't build the project because they're denied the final approvals, which is the collective approvals from all the various permitting.
But I think to
entities.
Jeff's point, that doesn't mean every request that he has made has to be approved.
Well, if he can't, I think that, again, going to the definition, if it's a final approval necessary to move forward, I believe it's the.
But we all understand that.
Right. I'm looking for the definition here of, for final approval. So definition of final approvals. Such permits, approvals, including any extensions, amendments, or new applications, expired. So the final approvals are the approvals of the underlying zoning relief after all the other appeals, if there are any, have expired. So that includes all final local, state, and federal permits and approvals necessary to construct the projects. So if it's
Let me ask
an
you-
approval that's necessary to construct the project, then that constitutes final.
Let me ask you a question, Lars. And I'm not giving an opinion if you should or shouldn't get your drive-through. That's up to the ZBA. But if you were not to get your drive-through, would you consider that justification to terminate this agreement?
Yes,
So you would?
absolutely. Yep. Specifically says in 5C, ZBA issues each and all of the special permits requested in Section 6 within the regulatory timeframes in a form that's reasonably acceptable. So while there may not be limitations in the definition of reasonably acceptable that constrains or does not constrain the drive-through, it still would need to be approved.
Okay, we know where you stand. Just, I have another, more of a legal question for you, Jay. In the agreement, it says that we get an easement, but we have Lars has the option to request that we take the land by eminent domain.
Correct.
Correct. When we take land by eminent domain, we have to compensate the fair value of the land, normally.
There's a waiver in there.
But I see there's a waiver for the easement. Is there a waiver if it goes eminent domain,
There's a waiver of the value as well.
for eminent domain too? Can you,
Yes.
I didn't see where
I
it
didn't
said
see
the
that, okay.
value.
if you can show us that?
Yeah.
I think it's number G is the option for taking.
Yeah, it's going there.
Jeff, for clarification, are you suggesting if we just took the land instead of entered into
It
an
says the
agreement?
applicant waives the requirement for an appraisal as a precondition of such taking and waives all damages for such a taking.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's in
Jake,
number
what
G?
page are you on?
That's page 11.
11.
It's in the middle of paragraph G.
Okay.
That was an ad that we did last week. I kind of added.
Okay,
to
got
the
that, yeah, okay, okay. Okay, thanks. Can I ask one more?
It's up to you. You're my boss, so yeah.
Where it says at the end, the termination of agreement, it says applicant and town's fulfillment of obligations will expire on December 31st, 2034 unless otherwise extended. Does that just mean that we have to record the easement by then and we've fulfilled our obligation, or do we have to build out in the easement or start construction of the easement to fulfill our obligation? Like if by 2024, if we've done nothing but record the easement, does this say that it would go away because we haven't undertaken construction?
2034, yeah.
This is 2034.
2034. but-
In 10
but
years,
you-
yeah, in 10 years. In 10
Same
years.
question, yeah.
10 years.
Well, we don't have the the exact language of the easements yet as to whether or not there would be reverter language. That's still out there in front of us as to what.
That was, I brought that up to both Lars and everyone many times, that if we make this agreement, we want the easement in perpetuity no matter what. I just want to make sure that that doesn't change that.
It's my understanding that what that language is saying is that the board has to use the authorization you are given at annual town meeting to formally vote to accept it.
Okay.
You don't have to necessarily build and execute that infrastructure improvement.
Okay.
That's all I understood.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted, I want to make sure.
And I know there's the language that we previously talked about, should you decide you'd want to just have the land transferred under eminent domain. Was that just a negotiation back and forth, or is that something you're thinking about for purposes of ease?
John could describe the logic behind it better, but if I can try to summarize, the essence of it is to have a backup option if the easement is not taken, and that would in any way harm the vested rights under the site plan approval and
site
special
plan.
permits,
Got
just
it.
so we can
Understood.
effectuate
Understood.
one way or another.
If for some reason what town meeting gave us approval for in May of this year, should between now and June 30th, 2034, we do not act upon accepting that easement, this board or future board, then you'd have the right to say,
Just take
must
it.
take by eminent domain.
Right, right.
Okay, no,
Or at any time.
Or at
between
any
now
time
and
in
then,
between.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
you
can't,
could,
conditioned on town meeting giving you the authority to take it.
yeah, understood. Okay.
Are all of these conditions and promises also going to be included in the ZBA's decision on both parcels?
So, and that's a good question, Costa. Originally, we were we really tethered them together, so they were almost kind of carbon copy-ish. And it became a little ungainly on the zoning side, because there's things that we can do in a zoning decision and things we can't do. So what we're capturing, there's certainly reference to the MOU in the zoning decision, which we're still working through final drafts. And there's an absolute requirement for the individual mitigation items, or the actual traffic improvements that they're doing. That's all in there. All these other terms about conveyances are more unique to this. There's enough commonality so that they kind of work hand in glove, but the obligations here, it can't require in a zoning decision that people convey land, for example. We can make reference to that, but basically it's more of a guidepost.
So here's a scenario. If this is signed the way it is, the ZBA grants approval of the commercial piece without the drive-through. Lars just said he'll terminate this agreement. So we have the commercial piece without a drive-through, but without the land to widen the road.
But with a lot of other traffic mitigation. So
And to add to the cost is, if the 40B were approved, if we sign this, it could even be this scenario, we sign this, the 40B apartments get approved, everyone thinks we have this, then the drive-through is at the next meeting, it doesn't get approved, this goes away, but the apartment approval is already in place, it can't be reversed.
right, but it has traffic mitigation. I will state, and I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form, that the select board still does possess certain eminent domain authority, regardless of what happens.
But that comes at a cost.
Then that would come at the cost.
So that's where, the discomfort is, that we can end up with both projects without the easements.
Correct.
That is a possibility.
It is. It is.
So what is the benefit of signing this if that possibility exists?
What are the tracks of the two projects timeline for ZBA approval? Are they parallel, or is the 40B likely to be approved ahead of the commercial, or the commercial, do we know?
That, but I think the 40B is likely gonna, they're catching, the commercial's catching up with the 40B, but the 40B, I believe the hope is that we can get this thing wrapped up for next week's meeting, is that?
I think the intent was it'd be parallel.
Yeah.
Do it the same meeting, I believe. Do it the same meeting.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're just about there on both. They've worked hard on the design elements of it. Obviously, there's still the unknown issue of the drive-through.
I just, to see if the scenario I laid out was a possibility, that's why I asked.
If I could add additional perspective to this as well, and I definitely understand Lars's position and posture at the moment, but I think from the developer's perspective, there's a huge benefit to giving up that easement, and that it will more than likely lead to a $2.5 million cash infusion from the state, building up brand new infrastructure outside the significant private development that he's poised to make, or his team is poised to make on that corner. And so while I certainly don't mean to call your bluff, I would say that there's an element that I don't want to get lost in this conversation, that as much as it is a benefit to the town of Middleton to have that easement in place and that infrastructure built, it is a very much a benefit to that development as well. Just to keep in the back of your head.
And Lars, you're unwilling to add a clause to this, something to the effect that the drive-through would not be a reason, like a clause that says a rejection of the drive-through would not be grounds to terminate this agreement?
I'm not willing to do that at this time. Just
Okay.
based on a couple of comments of made, just based on the economic profile of the marketplace in general, it's a critical aspect to make the whole project achieve what I've been aiming for, which is to try and create a best-in-class neighborhood situation. I understand people are concerned about the drive-through. I would hope that people who have been paying attention would see that we have tried to do everything to make the drive-through as innocuous as possible, including having the drive-through lane go deep into the site. There's very minimal chance of there ever being any backup interference onto 114. We have had the drive-through as part of the proposal from the very early stages, and at this point now, the drive-through and the mitigation for the drive-through has been incorporated in plans that have been reviewed by our traffic engineer, TEC, the Zoning Board of Appeals peer review traffic engineer, and Mass DOT as part of MEPA review. And none of those have raised flags to say that implementing a drive-through at this location is problematic. There certainly are things we have to do to mitigate the overall traffic impacts, but the analysis, the data is showing that what we're proposing to do for traffic mitigation, even before widening the intersection, will mitigate the impacts of having a drive-through that location.
You don't know what specific use will utilize the drive-through.
Correct.
So it's hard to analyze because, a Dunkin' Donuts has, a different profile than some other, food establishment with a drive-through. So
Yep.
how do the traffic engineers come to that conclusion?
Could be a bank, could be
Yeah.
a pharmacy.
So the traffic engineer uses the
Worst case scenario?
international, well, we're using the worst case because we're showing a coffee shop.
Okay.
So it would be like a Dunkin' Donuts from a traffic generation perspective. We have heard from the zoning board for many months, they don't want another Dunkin' Donuts. And so we will be submitting our latest materials to the zoning board this coming Thursday, and included in that will be an offer to restrict specifically certain vendors that the town is concerned about, whether it's a Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or Aroma Joe's or what have you.
And again, this board, and I want to tread lightly here, because this board has no control over the Board of Appeals. We appoint, but other than that, there's a reason why they have control over these items. But if I could ask, if you're willing to answer, when you say that you may be making an offer to the ZBA that says would restrict, is it restrict a Dunkin' Donuts or restrict a establishment such as or similar to a Dunkin' Donuts? And I can tell you, I think the reason why some of this board are, this is why their hackles are up, are when a certain establishment moved into town with a drive-through, it became an overnight nightmare with a very long queuing line.
Yep.
That ended up, some of it ended up at a court battle, but it also ended up the drive-through having to be shut down for a period of time because it backed and snaked around the building, came down another road, and then actually backed up significantly onto 114, both north and south.
Yep.
And how, well, north and south Main Streets, not north and south roadways. How an accident never happened, I don't know. Secondly, a second drive-through ended up opening up in town with a coffee shop that has had significantly less traffic. Could be the business, could be what's being sold, could be the clientele. I don't understand that. That's why I'm not on the Zoning Board of Appeals, but I think that's kind of what the concern is specifically about this.
Yep.
And again, I'm not trying to prejudge the ZBA's decision here.
Sure. And just to understand, we're not trying to create like a high throughput fast food type environment. That's not what we're trying to do here. We are trying to get a high quality sit and stay operator. It's like what Starbucks used to be 10 years ago with the third room, where you could go and sit down with your laptop and hang out for a couple of hours, maybe meet someone for coffee, that kind of a thing. That is the type of format we're trying to attract. But the feedback we're getting from the operators that do that sort of stuff and are not national chains is that they need the drive-through in order to capture the morning commute traffic, in order to effectively subsidize having that kind of highly amenitized space that might have periods of activity throughout the day, but as a bedroom community, there's just less volume. There's not major employers nearby other than several small businesses, but it's not like they can count on a high level of traffic throughout the day to support it. So that is the feedback we're receiving, is the two complement each other.
Okay. No, I
and it's
appreciate
the
that.
drive. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, this is actually, I looked at the agenda and I realized this. This is actually a joint meeting with the Zoning Board of Appeals, because, or at least it's been posted as such, because after the close of this, we're actually making an appointment with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So,
Yep.
I mean, again, I'm not asking for this board to prejudge or to weigh in at all on this topic, but
But and Brian, I really want to be careful, because there's a pending public hearing too. Pending public hearings, they could give input on, where they see this. I don't want them
Okay, understood.
talking about.
that's why I said throw the flag if
that deliberation
Yep,
in this,
understood.
because everyone that is relying on the continued public hearing there.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. I have a comment that when we first talked about a development agreement, it was really just for the 40B. That's what it was all about, the 40B. And we didn't really discuss the commercial at all, and then the commercial got added in, we were okay with it, but now every single condition of the commercial is added in here, and in the intent of this, really, they call it a friendly 40B, not a friendly commercial development. So it's, not only did the commercial get added in, but it's every single condition of the commercial. That's just my take on it. I don't know if anybody else has that take, but that's my take.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not. The zoning board's going to do what the zoning board's going to do, but the zoning board has less power, as we've discussed, under the 40B, and more power under the special permit. If the zoning board, and I'm not suggesting they are or aren't, if the zoning board is dissatisfied with where Lars is on it, or if even two members are dissatisfied with where Lars is, they could say no. They might not approve it with a non-drive-through, that is an option, but they could just say, you and I aren't in the same place, and it could be a no. So I'm not trying to bargain here, I'm not using this table to discuss that, but there are three options on the commercial project and the 40B, and that is approval as is, approval with some kind of conditions that Lars may or may not be satisfied with, and denial. And the authority to deny is pretty powerful under special permits. I think there's still some discussion out there in front of us, and maybe there could even be compromises in and around what kind of limitations so that there's not a Dunkin' Donut repeat over there. That's perhaps a discussion. I think the zoning board members, even those that have expressed some concern over drive-through there, are open-minded. I would hope that Lars and his team would be there too. And I'm not trying to compel a result here on that. I'm just trying to give you all the information that I have.
If the special permit is granted and the comprehensive permit is approved, this is signed, what's the steps after that?
So we,
Under
sorry.
this agreement or under those permits?
I'm saying he has the permits, this is signed, has those permit. What steps, do you still have to go back to the state for final approval or anything?
On the 40B.
On the 40B?
For sure.
And that revolves around your financing?
No, it's more so just to demonstrate compliance with the 40B program. So basically, they know and anticipate that whatever was originally filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit application will be modified as part of working with the community. So they want to see what the final result of that decision is to make sure that everything's going to comply. That's one part. Then there's the regulatory agreement, which basically is creating the rules that enforce us complying with managing the affordable units predominantly is the issue.
Because early on, when Mass Housing did a site visit to that, I asked, the state, person that was doing the site visit, if, it would be a significant length of time before all of these approvals are granted. As part of that initial application, you had, submitted some information on financing, but it could be, because of the passage of time, no bank is gonna stick with the, finance commitment that long. So my question to her was, after the comprehensive permit, do they have to come back to you to show you that they still have valid financing? Because the last thing we want is for you to start building and run out of money and we have a half-empty, half-constructed building.
Yeah.
And so that's why, as I recall, she's telling, yes, they have to come back to us. And that's one of the things we'll look at as their final financing plan.
Yes, and these sorts of projects don't get financed, or you can't close without having all the financing you need to get there with a healthy contingency. There's not, I'll give you the other $1 million 6 months from now. It's got to all be there when you start.
And we've learned about healthy contingencies on our project.
Yeah.
So, agreements, there's elements, of risk. You sign a lease, well, you're giving up your space, and you may or may not collect all the rent because the tenant may or may not be able to pay you. So every agreement, has an element of risk, and if the risk is acceptable, you sign the agreement. So the element of risk here is that Lars says, hey, I didn't get all my requested relief on the special permits, I walk away from this agreement. So is that a risk we want to take?
I just want to clarify again, that the easement stuff, they would potentially be walking away from. The other mitigation is baked into the permits.
Right.
So there wouldn't be walking away from that, because those are, the traffic signalization is a big piece that Rich and his crew have worked pretty hard on there.
So, I say that, keeping in mind what Justin said about, the benefits of that easement, to everyone. So I'm coming to the conclusion that it is a risk. worth taking and signing this.
So, if I might, Mr. Chairman, I actually think we should enter executive session. There's some questions I have that I'd rather ask our attorney directly. I think this will be very brief. And if it's easier, because I know we have a crowd, we can,
We could step out rather
we
than-
could step out. Yeah, we could step out to the cafeteria.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have a
It's
posted
on the
exec session.
agenda.
So, but again, that's up to the remaining board members if,
All right, if we're in agreement, then,
I'll move to go into executive session pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body with regards to 49 South Main Street, 10 to 18 Boston Street, Willowbridge, Middleton Development Agreement.
second.
all right, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll
Can I
call,
ask
so Debbie
Deb
gotta take
for a roll call vote, please?
Brian?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes?
Rick?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes,
And I am a yes.
we'll step out.
I think this will be brief.
All right, I'd like to go back into open session for the June 18th Board of Select Board meeting. Okay. Okay, we've had some discussion, and I think we'll just make a couple of, another couple of questions from us, and see if we can make a motion.
So I know we've talked back and forth, so to Costa's point of risk, in any agreement, there's risk. So, just so we're clear here, so should this agreement get canceled due to an issue around drive-through or anything else in the final determination by the ZBA, what I've been saying from the day that this was first proposed is something was going to be built on that property as the for sale sign went up. It was never going to stay a vacant parking lot. And this was, what I've said, is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to actually fix that intersection and have some mitigating efforts to actually have a positive effect on the traffic on 114 in Middleton that hits at the crossroads of 114 and Route 62. So I feel comfortable in the understanding that should this agreement at some point go south due to something within the project determination through the ZBA, that this board, and I'm not a big fan of it, but would fully and openly support this board almost instantly moving forward for a eminent domain proceeding, so we can move forward with the efforts that we are trying to do to fix the intersection. I understand completely, Lars, the position you're taking. If I was sitting in your chair, I'd be taking the same exact position. I just wanted to make sure that I understood completely around the efforts of what our ability would be and how quick our ability would be, both for that easement piece, if not more. So, okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. All right, anything else, nothing else?
I have nothing.
Do you want to take any public comment?
I don't know, do we have anyone that wanted to, go ahead, sir, you just rise and identify yourself, where you live, please.
Fred Feldman, resident at Rowell Lane and a member of the board at Rowell Lane. I'm hearing the term agreement, so I don't know if this is my last chance to ask this question. I know there were people here from the zoning board as well. I've asked this 3 different times and have been told I would get an answer, so maybe if it's an agreement, you have the answer in your paperwork. You're talking about different agreements between the town and the builder. As an abutter, our contractor has been mitigating groundwater issues as well as runoff issues. And in the peer review report, it was recommended that there be looking at a groundwater monitoring system. If the town, it would be required if there were 10,000 gallons per day going in from the septic system into the ground. It's just 100 gallons less than that, and it was said that it would not cost much to install a groundwater monitoring system because, again, we have concerns about water runoff as well as water table issues at Blue Haven. So I've asked it, and 3 different times I was told I would be getting an answer. Now that I'm hearing the term agreement, if in your paperwork, is there going to be a requirement for a groundwater monitoring system? As the peer review indicated, this would be wise to look at. So if you could answer that question, I would.
Sure. I'm gonna ask Town Administrator.
Sure. Mr. Feldman, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
And I've seen you at a couple ZBA.
I've been at every meeting.
So I've heard the question before, that what you're describing is actually outside of the scope of this agreement. So what you are asking to be addressed would not be addressed as part of this document.
Okay, but if it, with all due respect, if the agreement is being done tonight, I had asked for it to be looked at for the 40B, for the residential. I'd given a copy of my notes
Yep.
for it to be considered, so.
And if I may, because
Sure,
I know we worked
absolutely.
together at the last CBA meeting,
Right.
and so TEC, who is the peer reviewer for the comprehensive permit for the
Yes.
40B, as well as for the commercial project, is making their full peer review presentation at that meeting, that next June ZBA meeting.
Great.
And I've asked them to address that in their presentation. As
Okay.
I had mentioned at the last meeting, I would have an answer for you at that ZBA meeting.
Oh, so it'll be at the ZBA meeting, not
But
the?
yes, because that's part of their peer review of
Okay.
the different components.
Okay.
So that, I will double check. I believe I already wrote it in the email to them after, as a recap from the last CBA meeting, but I will affirm that right now.
Okay.
But that is TEC's domain in a report to the zoning board.
Okay, my concern was that it was an agreement, so I thought it would have
But
been
it
this.
might be helpful to understand is, and trust me, it's taken me a while to get my head around the
Yeah.
whole
I'm just
40B
confused what
and a
meeting
friendly
does what.
40B process, or so-called friendly, which is 40, what is the chapter and verse of the so-called friendly 40B?
A local.
Local initiative project.
Right, that's not the only way a project could be
Exactly.
friendly, but that is the.
So what needs to be understood is, there's an agreement that's being proposed this evening with this board.
Yeah.
This board could enter into the agreement, and the ZBA could do something completely different.
Okay.
The ZBA could say, that's very nice, no. The ZBA could say, that's very nice, yes, or any combination thereof. There are certain agreements, certain details as part of the Board of Appeals, zoning Board of Appeals approvals for this project, both the residential portion of it and the separate commercial portion of it, that are separate and distinct of this.
Okay.
So
That explains.
when you hear agreement, that doesn't mean everything's over and you don't have a voice. You actually, the question you posed is, to Jackie's point, is much more relevant at the next ZBA meeting than it would be here.
That's clarifying.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Feldman, I emailed TEC on May 23rd during the meeting and asked them to address that in their presentation.
Perfect. Okay, I thought this was the end of, okay,
Nope.
thank you.
It's a good question,
Appreciate it.
though.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm
Just
Lois
come-
Afro.
sure, come
And
up.
we also live on Rowell Lane.
Great.
Is one of the options to postpone an agreement? Like, I don't understand why you don't have all the answers, but you're looking to make an agreement. Can you just say, we're not going to make an agreement until the ZBA decides on some of these issues?
Good question, one that I've asked in the past. If that were the case, then we wouldn't require an agreement. We wouldn't require this agreement, basically.
Someone has to go first, I guess.
If they go get their approval from the ZBA first, they don't need
They don't need us.
an agreement from us.
So the agreement from us sets certain ground rules of what the town expects. The ZBA deals with the ground rules around zoning. We're dealing with items that are outside of zoning that they could attempt to put into the zoning agreement, the ZBA order of conditions, but this is a separate, and this is why I said it's taken me a while to get my head around this, because this board doesn't affect zoning, the zoning Board of Appeals does. The zoning Board of Appeals works on zoning. They don't have control over this portion of a local initiative of a 40B. Now, the route could have been what was originally happening here, which is a traditional 40B, where this board would have no control over, and I will tell you what is in this agreement. The likelihood of all of this being in a traditional 40B agreement would be very unlikely. Especially a lot of the mitigating factors that we're pushing around, the intersection, the traffic, and if there's anything that I've heard overwhelmingly across town, but also by abutters and neighbors and neighborhoods, is around traffic. We all drove here tonight. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So as much as I'm not a big fan of the 40B process, I do like the local initiative piece, which actually gives this board, or in the case of a city, the mayor and the city council's administration, the ability to actually negotiate. I also appreciate Lars' willingness to say, I am willing to negotiate, rather than he could have said from the beginning, no, I'm going the traditional 40B route, I'll do everything that I'm supposed to do and nothing more.
Thank you for clarifying that. I do have one other question. There's been a lot of discussion about mitigating traffic. And I know it's around 114 and 62, but has any of that discussion included Blue Haven? Like when it talks about mitigating traffic, is it just that intersection, which is a mess, we all know that, but does it extend a little bit east to cover the Blue Haven turns?
It's going to extend further down on South Main Street. It's going to extend down to North Main Street. It's going to extend to the intersection of Maple Street, the intersection of our neighborhood, entering into the Howe Manning and that area, as well as all the way down to the intersection with Lake Street.
Okay, so it's just not that.
And down onto Boston Street. Part of the mitigating factor is the land that is being provided, which is going to allow additional lanes on Boston Street, an additional lane on 114, which is going to take that bottleneck and open it up some, in addition to dedicated lanes, additional overflow lanes, on and off lane going into the project, on and off lane coming out of the project, items that I think are going to have a pretty dramatic effect on that intersection. And if you think about think about the morning and the afternoon, how it ripples past that intersection. That's ground zero of our traffic issue. And to our attorney's point, whether this project was happening or not, the issue's here today. It's not like, well, the intersection's great, we think it's going to get worse. It's a problem. It's a huge problem right now. It's been a problem for decades.
That turning lane, is that going to be the kind of turning lane that is on South Main, like further south, where it's like a two-way, you can go like
No,
either
no, no, there's
direction?
going to be dedicated lanes just for turning.
Okay, out of Blue Haven and then out
No,
of
no, no,
Angelicus?
not on Blue Haven, on
Boston and South
114
Main.
in Boston.
Updated signalage down the line and those kind of things as well as the physical.
All goes as planned, that intersection is not going to look anything like it does today.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi, Norma Andreucci, I too live on Rowell Lane. Will there still be sidewalks on both sides of the street?
Yes, there will.
There
And
will?
there'll be sidewalks that, as part of this agreement, that part of the land that is given is not for sidewalks, it's for roadway, and then there'll be sidewalks, and there needs to be rebuilt sidewalks on Boston Street as well.
So the land that will be taken, I assume it's not from the, not the Angelica, it'll be from the Angelica side, because the other side has people's homes on that.
No, none of it is happening on the other side of Boston Street. So that roadway will shift wider. So the center lane of the roadway now is actually going to shift. But it'll have no effect on the land that is owned by the abutters on the other side of Boston Street.
All right. So it's a good question, not to make it short, but again, it was, then why didn't we have all the answers before? But this is where this was all eventually coming to, and then there's actually the day that it actually comes. So if it looks like we're, putting a little more focus on it, it's because it's that important. Yes?
I just have another question. I'm still Norma Andreucci from Rowell Lane. And I don't know any of you, okay, and you don't know me. But my question is, does this board fear that that the builder and the lawyer and the troop will go away? Is there a fear of that?
No, I can, and I'll say this to Lars, I don't have any fear that he's going to go away, and I can tell you why. I mean, I've done my research, and I will tell you from day one, he's been pretty open about what he's trying to accomplish here, but he's also been very open to listening to input. How long ago was it, Lars, we sat in the library building? 2.5 years ago, and Lars physically had his head removed from his shoulders from the public. And he had absolutely zero reason to have to do that. But this board had asked him to do so. And he did so. And I will tell you, from folks that have had questions, I have heard from folks that he has personally responded to. I have no reason to believe that this is something that he's just going to walk away from. I can tell you the investment he's put in over the last 2.5 to 3 years. He's not going to walk away from this. There's still going to be negotiations that he's going to have to do with the Zoning Board of Appeals. There's language in here, we're going to keep his feet to the fire. There's language in here, he's going to keep our feet to the fire. And I think when there's risk on both sides, I mean, the risk is here, if we didn't sign this, we could say, we have no interest in the grant that we just applied for. We could say, hey, we're out.
So with 2.5 years investment on their behalf and seemingly well managed through it, do you really think a drive-through would have them walk away?
We're not saying that he is
I
going
would-
to walk
no.
away.
I would say he's
don't
gonna-
feel that.
No,
Is that a possibility?
I-
You're worried about
no.
I personally don't believe so. Here's what I wanted to understand. You heard me say once in a generation opportunity to fix this intersection. Part of that is because of the land that he's providing to here. I wanted to know that if he did walk away, we could still, and there's a lot of documentation here and a lot of negotiation over 2.5 years showing that he was willing to give this land up, which would make me, and I think this board, very quickly to say, here's our opportunity, let's do an eminent domain. I also will tell you, if I was sitting in Lara's seat tonight, I wouldn't have said, without a drive-through, I'm okay with this agreement. He still needs to negotiate with the Zoning Board of Appeals. He's not going to give up his negotiating position right now, nor are we. So I guess we're in a standoff. But honestly, I feel confident enough that this is going to go forward. I feel confident enough that we're going to be able to fix this intersection and have a pretty dramatic effect on 114 and Maple and Boston Street.
So therefore, if the zoning board of appeals says no to a drive-through, they'll abide by that and move forward.
That's going to be his decision.
We'll see.
But he's saying that he would have the right not, if the zoning board of appeals granted it without a drive-through, he is saying that he can build it without the drive-through, but he's saying his obligation to grant the said easement, he would no longer be obligated to do that because he didn't get the drive-through. That's what we're talking about.
After 2.5 years of all this work and all that, that would be the, happens.
I think you're making Costa's point.
Yeah, no longer obligated, but like Costa articulated, these things, you know, when you come to these kind of agreements, as they are with a lot of things illegal that you deal with, they come with assumed risk. And there's a point where when you're looking at it, you have to weigh the benefit to the risk.
So there's assumed
And
risk
that's
on
where
both
we are at.
sides.
I'm sorry?
Absolutely.
There's assumed risk on
Absolutely.
both sides.
And there is,
The
that's
risk
to anyone in
on
any
anything.
side entering into it.
It's a risk we take every day.
So I will take a,
I'll move to approve the
Make a motion.
memorandum of understanding.
I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second. We have, take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Or is it
Aye.
a roll
Aye.
call?
No, you don't need a roll call.
Okay, aye.
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 Passes unanimously.
Do you need a roll call?
No, we're back in open session.
Okay. Perfect. Okay.
What do we do about signatures? Is that later?
We can be multiple counterparts. Justin will coordinate the signatures on this end, Jackie.
Yep.
You do it on your end. All right.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lars.
Well,
Thank you.
big thank you to the CBA for all the work that they've done as well, and our council and our town administrator and so many other folks in town. Not lost on me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this the,
I'm gonna send two.
Oh, we'll be talking to him.
All right, if you can, I'd like to move on to next item, which will be the joint appointment.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Move on with the appointments with the zoning board for the zoning board of appeals.
Mr. Chair, if you like, you can take it up
An
with the rest of the
alternate.
appointments.
yeah, if that,
Just do all the appointments at the same time.
yeah, actually, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that if we could take Article 8 and Article 9A up jointly.
As one article?
Yes.
This is the memorandum.
So the ZBA alternate position and the renewal of the other position.
So I don't actually have the packet online.
They're
Can we,
signing it. I'm just gonna run it out to them instead of me.
can you refresh for us? We have 2 zoning board of appeal alternate positions. We have 1 incumbent requesting a reappointment, and then we have a vacancy. And
Correct.
then the other positions we have this evening are,
The packet is up. I fixed
oh, it is up
it.
now.
I will
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
What is up for reappointments is 2 Board of Health positions held by Raymond Ryan and Paul LeBlanc. Bylaw review, 1 seat held by Richard Cardinelli, Council on Aging. 3, Gerald Grove, Francis J. Leary Jr., Leah Magnifico, Municipal Property Tax Relief Committee, Assessors Rep, Debbie Carboni, Rails to Trail, Martin Emick, Recreation Commission, Jennifer Pavensky, Solid Waste Advisory Committee, Jeff Garber, John Erickson, Rich Gregorio, Helen McPherson, Annie Wilton, Zoning Board of Appeals, 5-year term, 1, Rich Benevento, Zoning Board of Appeal alternate, where there's 2, and LeBlanc. Snyder holds 1 and wants reappointment, and Tom McMullen is asking for the other alternate position. The Municipal Property Tax Relief Committee, Nick Federico, who is the town treasurer rep on that. Solid Waste Advisory Committee ex officios, Jackie Brashnahan, Nick Federico, and Paul Goodwin.
So, one question before we do these. Is the Solid Waste Advisory Committee continuing after the recommendations that were made to town meeting, and is this going to continue as a standing committee?
What a wonderful question. No. And Mr. Garber, who sits on that committee, asked the same question. So to recap for the board, we discussed at Capital Budget Saturday when you met with the FinCom that we would reappoint that group for 2 years, and they would meet once in the winter of 2025, January, February, and once in the winter of 2026 to take a pulse check on their recommendations.
Got it. Okay.
So we're obligating them only to 2 meetings, and I'm saying that in public, and I mean it.
So, Jeff, that means Joan will have you back home more often.
Jackie spoke.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the reappointment for the 3-year term to the Bylaw Committee, the Council on Aging, the Municipal Property Tax Relief Committee, the Rails to Trails Committee, and the Recreation Commission for the individuals listed as such for a term.
Let's do all of them.
Well, some of these are different terms.
I know.
Okay, for a
just
term
do 'em as a
of
whole.
through June 30th, 2027. I also move that we approve the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate as described in this memo for for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee for a term through June 30th, 2025, 26. For the Zoning Board of Appeals, Rich Benevento for a term through June 30th, 2029. And for the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate, Ann LeBlanc Snyder for a term of 1 year through June 30th, 2025. Getting all of this, Jackie?
I am actually.
And for staff appointments?
Well, no. For the
Sorry. And for the other alternate position, Tom McMullen of 31 Stony Brook Lane, for a term through June 30th, 2025, in the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate. For the Municipal Property Tax Relief Committee, Nick Federico, through a term June 30th, 2027. And for the Solid Waste Advisory ex officios, for a term through June 30th, 2026.
Bingo.
That was a lot, Brian.
We have-
Want me to repeat that?
Could I have
No,
a,
thank you.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and a second, and, no other discussion or questions?
Well, Tom is a new applicant. You want to introduce yourself, Tom? Come up.
Oh, I didn't know Tom was here, I'm sorry.
Tom McMullen. I live at 31 Stony Brook Lane in Middleton. I'm a relatively new resident of Middleton. I've been here probably 2 years in September. I'm a landscape architect. I've worked in the North Shore now for probably close to 40 years. I've been self-employed, working for myself for about 34 years as a landscape architect.
Very nice.
It's another useful
Welcome
skill
aboard.
to have
I
on
think it
that
could be
board.
probably pretty helpful.
So, Tom, if you go and watch all of our previous meetings, meaning that you have nothing better to do with your time, I always ask the same question on planning board appointments and zoning board approval appointments. Do you plan on doing any development or work in town that would put you in conflict on being a member of the zoning board of appeals?
I do not.
And if there was ever a future full opening on the zoning board of appeals, would you have an interest in becoming a full member?
I would consider it.
Good, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Riveting.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome aboard.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, so then I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of the reappointments as mentioned, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? Passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you to everyone here that takes the time to volunteer for I know how much time it takes for people in.
Hey, when is the next ZBA meeting?
Thursday, 28th,
Just a week from
27th.
the 27th.
What are you having?
Is that how you attract people to come to your meetings? It's not the agenda?
So,
All new appointees and reappointees, make sure you
get sworn in.
Sworn in down
go to
with.
the town clerk's office. and get
Especially
sworn
before
in.
your next meeting.
We are closed tomorrow,
Yes.
Close tomorrow.
So,
Why?
Juneteenth.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong, okay.
yes.
Yeah, true.
You have till the 30th, but if Tom would like to participate next week, he does need to be sworn. They would like you greatly.
All right. Thank you very much.
Then 9B.
Moving on now, we'll move on to item 9B, which is to appoint a library board of trustees midterm vacancy
This is just an advertisement, Mr. Chair.
created by.
Erin Bennett.
Has she officially
Bennett?
vacated the position?
She has. She's formally resigned.
Who's resigned, and we want to thank Erin for all of her time and effort that she's put in with the library board of trustees.
So if you're interested in filling that position, submit your interest in an email to the selectman's office, select board office, and there'll be a joint appointment with the remaining trustees, and we'll like to try to do it at our July 9th
July 9th
meeting.
meeting.
Okay.
So what would be the cutoff for somebody to apply, just so people know that it might be watching?
I mean, I'd say honestly, right up until
The agenda?
right up until the meeting.
So, but they have up
Maybe the
until
meeting, yeah.
July,
Our meeting's
9th.
July 9th.
okay.
Yeah. So if we want to get it into the packet, I'd say people should get it into us by
The 4th.
the third Wednesday, the
Right,
third.
before the holiday.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a list of other vacancies available after the reappointments you completed tonight. It's very brief. Can I make a brief advertisement?
Certainly can, thank you.
Okay, so the current vacancies we have left after all the wonderful reappointment work you've done at your last two meetings include a 3-year term on the Bylaw Review Committee. And I know Mr. Garber can speak to what an exciting group that can be.
It is.
We are also looking for anyone who would like to join our wonderful Cultural Council. And those are 2 and 3-year terms depending on when you take your seat. So if you have a hankering to work on the culture of Middleton, the Cultural Council gives out grants for arts programming from the state. We have 1 seat for a 3-year term on the Historical Commission. We have 2 alternate 1-year terms on the Industrial and Commercial Review Committee. We have, we just did that one. We have 1 alternate open on the planning board, so that's a 1-year term for an alternate on the planning board. We have 1 3-year term on the Rails to Trails Committee. We have 1 3-year term on the Recreation Committee. And the trustees of the Flint Public Library, and that is a term going through 2025 as a point of reference for those interested in applying.
And
That's it.
and that seat was set to expire in the 2025 election.
Correct.
Okay.
That is all we have for seats. So we're down to under 10 openings, which is really excellent.
Very good.
Did we just lose a planning board alternate?
Nick Benugli did not seek reappointment.
Okay.
All right? All right, thank you, Jackie.
Absolutely.
All right, now.
Once we get a candidate for that, we'll have a joint appointment meeting for that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Let's move on now, and let's get a department head update from our information technology gentlemen, Leon Welsh and Colby Cousins.
Would
would
you
say
like to take the one-day liquor license while we set up the technology for the technology report?
Okay.
Thank you.
So we will do that. If it takes them a minute to set up, we'll move on and take number 11, which is the one-day liquor license for the lot. Now, I believe the,
Is this just an extension of the one we've already granted, or is it separate?
It is, and I've requested to add Thursday and Friday, in addition to Saturday and Sunday, correct?
Oh, so 2 extra days.
So,
Correct.
if, when all is said and done, if your current request is approved, how many days would you have gotten one-day licenses for?
For this entire year?
Yes.
It would be 70-something, I want to think? 78.
Okay.
Do we have an unlimited amount to give?
No. So under one individual, it's capped. I don't recall the exact number.
30.
Is it 30?
Yep.
No. So are you doing it under different managers or?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
I think we need to revisit, after we deal with this, revisit our policy because, this is beginning to look like somebody who has just a standard liquor license because you're there all the time.
We're there weather permitting, sure.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, it's a weird kind of, it's a weird license, right? And it's used kind of throughout the state. I could name 5 or 6 beer gardens in downtown Boston that do the same thing. They use it for 5 to 7 days a week for 30 days.
So
and then
I
they
would,
have a new
I mean, I don't have a problem approving this evening, but I would say at some point, we may want to have a discussion, if this is something you want to continue, about a seasonal license.
Sure.
And that may look different, so.
Sure. Absolutely.
And you won't have to spend Tuesday
Yeah,
nights
some
here.
municipalities don't do seasonal licenses. For sure, that would be a preference. That would be probably easier all around.
I don't know if you're allowed because you're not a brick and mortar. So that's the question of,
We have a seasonal license, it's not a brick and mortar.
but they're a
Yeah, but
permanent
it's not a
location on a golf course.
Separate license.
But they're still they're a golf cart on a golf course. No, I'm just saying in
Yeah.
terms of what the ABCC considers a permanent address, this is not their permanent address. They're a guest on the site. Do you see what I'm saying?
So maybe a matter of paperwork.
We
of
do
leasing a
lease. We
certain
do lease
area,
a space on the site.
Yeah, we can get into it with ABCC then.
Yeah, but I think to Costa's point,
Yeah,
it's,
I mean,
this is the ongoing struggle that unfortunately you're going to have to listen to, and not that you're getting hung up in it. This is the ongoing struggle with food parks within communities. There's always I have my restaurant with bricks and mortar, and I'm paying a larger rent, or I'm paying property tax, or I'm paying all of these infrastructures that a food truck park doesn't have. And then now that this is kind of turning into a little bit of a beer garden without being called a beer garden, there's always that push and play of, well, I've got a restaurant down the road that sells beer, and I think we talked about this before. Hey, I welcome that park being successful. I want it to be as successful as possible, because the times I've been there, I'm seeing it's driving people into Middleton from outside of Middleton. It's not just residents that are there, there are folks from outside.
Sure.
Which is good for the town, it's good for the businesses that are there. I mean, we have a business that stays open all year there.
Yep.
Rain or snow. So I just think at some point after this season is over, this board's gonna probably have to come up with a little bit more process. I mean, you've proved the process of, in the beginning, we were concerned that a detail needed to be there all the time, and you've proven otherwise.
yeah.
So,
There's been no issues
so it's
there.
not all bad.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of what we thought this might look like in the original meeting is how it's played out. This is very much a family-friendly, park, and so we get a lot of, mom and dad having lunch or dinner with their kids, and they'll grab a beer. We get very few second rounds of beer, or it's been great in that respect. It's very easy from a liquor control standpoint. But I think a lot of what we thought this was going to look like is how it's actually played out. So very happy about that.
Okay. So
Okay.
we have enough licenses to give. All right, well, I'll take a motion for these one-day liquor licenses.
And these are for, let me open this up.
There is a list.
A big list of
Yeah,
dates.
do we just want
I
to?
have it in separate.
From the,
Do you want to? Does someone want to use the licenses to read off
That's
because it's
better, yeah,
concise?
because there's a lot of workers' comp paperwork and everything.
Okay.
I'm sorry, they might not be in date order.
Yeah, I'm making sure they're in date order here. Okay. Is the board's preference to do 3 votes or a single vote?
Single.
Single vote's fine.
So this would be to extend or approve additional one-day licenses to Winter Hill Brewing Company and Dignant Brewing Company LLC located at 328 Broadway Street, Somerville, with Breck Bailey, manager, for the dates of Thursday and Friday, noon to 8 p.m., June 20th through July 5th, and Sundays and Saturdays from noon to 8 p.m., July 6th and 7th. Second part of this is to the Winter Hill Brewery, of the motion is Winter Hill Brewery Company, Indignant Brewing Company LLC located at 328 Somerville, for the premises known as The Lot, for Bert Holdridge, manager, on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., July 11th through August 30th, 2024. And then the third portion of the motion is for Winter Hill Brewing, Indigent Brewing Company LLC, 328 Broadway, Somerville, Hannah Fay, manager, on the following premises of the lot designated area for the vehicle dispensing alcohol on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday, and Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., August 31st through September 29th.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can we put a tickler on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, for maybe like the October timeframe of us kind of coming up for a process going forward? Because I would not be surprised if we get others that are going to start making requests next
Figure a way
year.
to consolidate the process. Yeah.
I think we're going to have to make a determination if this board wants a full-blown beer garden or what's that's going to look like.
Right, I agree. All right, okay, so, gentlemen, thank you for waiting. All right, and,
No problem.
So go ahead, fellas.
So I'm Colby Cousins. I'm the CIO of the town of Danvers and the North Shore IT Collaborative. And we're going to do a short strategic technology review for Middleton tonight. So a little about the collaborative. We are 8 communities now that work together on the North Shore. We have a number of affiliated organizations as well. We're very active in the regional ecosystem. Collaborative was established in 2021 and represents an 8x multiplier of Middleton's purchasing power. That translates to 25% annual volume discount on cyber services and a 35% annual volume discount on help desk services. We theorized at inception we could become a target for grant funding, and that has proven true with over $1.5 million raised to date. And our mission is to collaboratively secure our systems, control costs, and improve services. A little bit of the magic that makes the collaborative work is this concept. We call it fixed cost deduplication. Others refer to it as reduction. But the basic premise is an IT asset. We use data center here as an example. Like many assets, consists of a fixed cost component and a variable cost component. So the fixed cost component represents minimum spend for enterprise grade technology and is a barrier to entry for smaller organizations. The needs in Danvers for data center equipment exceed the minimum spend. So for us, hosting additional communities only incurs variable cost. Therefore, sharing an asset across the region deduplicates that fixed cost component 7 times. And we can provide enterprise grade equipment cheaper than the consumer or small business equipment that many of these smaller communities are used to. To go into some Middleton specifics, we have a contract with Middleton that provides a little bit deeper relationship than the rest of the communities in the collaborative. Middleton has access to my 5 internal staff with all of their varied expertise. And also, there's 2 managed service contracts in Danvers. One with Inno4, our help desk provider, who also does monitoring and patching. You use them as well. So there's a good synergy there. And then we work with a company called E+ Technology for managing the data center in our environment. And the concept of our contract is Middleton funds an extra employee for Danvers, and we provide 1 full-time equivalent in terms of hours from our full variety of specialized expertise. A variety of expertise that you wouldn't be able to find in a single individual. We have overlapping coverage, we have adjustable resources, and we have an ongoing professional development program for IT. Now, I mentioned adjustable resources. This is where you currently stand in terms of how you're allocating your IT resources. You're about 20% infrastructure, 10% business solutions, 20% customer service, and you're very heavy on strategy right now because that's what we're working on defining, your long-term strategic plan. So in terms of adjustment, as the strategic plan gains clarity and gets documented, we'll be able to reallocate some of the strategic resources to bolster some of these other areas operationally. We follow an IT management maturity model. So when we first encountered Middleton, you did have aspects of certain components of this maturity model, but you were more of a reactive scenario. We're moving you along to efficient and proactive. We're making progress on both of those. And then as part of our strategic technology plan, we're going to map out how to get through aligned and strategic. Strategic is the ultimate point you want to get to, where your IT investments are really benefiting your organization in other areas like operational efficiency, for example. Some strategic change we've seen so far, already complete, lifting you onto your fiber optic network, created an immediate little over $9,000 annual cost reduction on internet. And we did some consolidation of vendors and contracts and saved over $13,000 there. That $23,000 in total offsets the operational costs associated with the Microsoft 365 migration and the migration of the assessing database to a cloud product. Some planned strategic change we've identified. We're projecting a $10,000 annual savings when we implement the new phone system. And we're looking at some of your server refresh. We have some data center hosting operations that would allow us to address what you're looking at over the next 5 years is about $80,000 in capital server refresh. We can provide an annual operational cost, which makes things a little more approachable, and we can do that a little cheaper than what you can do on your own. We'll provide a 10% savings over the lifespan of that asset, and that will be an enterprise grade asset, which would be an improvement on the technology that you're using currently. We're working on writing a strategic technology plan. This is going to be our big project for the summer. really analyzing and documenting the path forward and our recommendations. And we're going to produce an IT policy handbook as well. A lot of best practices start by communicating via policy and having a policy to point to if there's a disagreement about something. So those policies are really important. There's about 18 core policies that we'll produce for you. And we just signed an RFP on a comprehensive cyber assessment, development of a formal incident response plan, and holding a tabletop exercise to test that plan. That is all grant funded. We received an $80,000 federal grant to perform these, to perform this, and I think the timing is really good. We've had about a year in your environment. It's a good time to review, see everything we've caught and anything that we didn't, and shore up those gaps. We're also working pretty intently on your refresh and maintenance cycle. A quote here from one of our esteemed local leaders, John F. Kennedy: "The time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining." We don't want to get into emergency replacements. That gets costly and you incur downtime. What we'd like to do is get all technology hardware, computers, phones, switches, access points, servers, etc., into a 5-year maximum life cycle, and we'd like to address that through a cadence of a 20% annual refresh as possible. This will require moving some puzzle pieces around, but that's the goal we'd like to achieve. Also, all software under active security agreement. That will provide us consistent security patching, cost predictability. Over the long term, it will provide a cost reduction, and we'll have less compatibility issues if all of our products are similar vintage in our environment.
Can I ask a question? So when the now 8 communities, but in the beginning when there was less, how disparate was the softwares, the hardware, the systems? Was it Mars and Venus, or was there some similarity?
There's a lot of similarity. A lot of municipalities use either the same or very similar software.
Munis, for example, but I mean like the infrastructure in terms of, I assume now there's a standard laptop, desktop that is being proposed, standard servers and so forth.
Correct. I would call things eclectic when we first found them.
Okay.
There's, I think, some of the strategy we provide gets things like that in line and standardized so that we can realize things like bulk purchase discounts if we're using all the same standardized hardware, right? So there's a lot of strategic work that goes into convincing everybody to get on board with the same products.
Understood.
So in terms of strategic goals for Middleton, there's 2 things we know we're going to do for any organization, and that's work on continuous risk reduction and continuous efficiency improvements. That's the main purpose of cybersecurity, is that risk reduction, and the main purpose of implementing general IT is to achieve those efficiency improvements, those operational efficiency improvements. Beyond that, we'll have to detail out your formal strategic technology plan, and we've already started on that. We've reviewed the select board priorities and goals from the most recent budget document, which was a nice document with some very clear information for us in there, so I appreciate that. We're scheduling staff and stakeholder interviews. We're doing public sector and market trend analysis. We've already done substantial technical discovery within the environment. We'll be folding in expectations for the new municipal complex, and we'll be applying some lessons learned from our work throughout the collaborative. And what we'll produce is a deliverable for you, a document that really roadmaps out the next, we'll probably do 3 years. We might get to a 5-year plan at some point, but I think you've got a lot of things to evaluate, and we don't want to lock ourselves into too long of a time period, the way that technology changes.
And I believe you guys may have already seen an outline of that document that addresses our roadmap to the new municipal building as well.
Thank you. As we write the strategic plan, there will be some available collaborative assets to consider. So I mentioned our data center. We've invested $500,000 in data center. That's a scalable resource. And as I mentioned, we only incur variable costs to scale it. So it's relatively cheap for us to do that, and we can offer enterprise services relatively cheap to our partners. Included in those hosting services is the use of our $200,000 immutable backup and recovery appliance. Immutable meaning it cannot be affected by ransomware. We also leverage cloud disaster recovery services in the Microsoft Azure cloud, so we can fail over to the cloud if necessary. And we have redundant 5 gig fiber optic internet links that we now have a fiber optic link which will soon be redundant back to Middleton, between Middleton and Danvers. You'll have the opportunity to leverage that internet service as you'd like. And I just this month signed the deal on a $300,000 video surveillance system with AI analytics and advanced object detection. That's a scalable resource that's going to overhaul our system in Danvers, but is multi-tenant, and you'd have the option to leverage this advanced system in your municipal complex as well, and we could manage that. Same thing with door fob access control. We have a multi-tenant product for that, and those opportunities are available to you. We'll describe the value proposition of these and the pros and cons in our strategic technology plan. So you'll have the information to make the decisions. And then just kind of finishing up, there's some strategic opportunities on the horizon, particularly with emerging technology. For the last 6 months, we've been engaged in artificial intelligence research with a master's student in AI and robotics from Northeastern University. And we've established a research and development partnership with the Andover CIO and Barnstable County IT Director. And to kick some of this stuff off, I'm announcing a $10,000 net revenue reinvestment in research and development for artificial intelligence. So the collaborative does collect a small amount of net revenue, and it is our feeling that under-resourced organizations like municipalities rarely get the chance to invest in research and development or innovation. And that's what we want to do with the net revenue fund that we're building up. We want to try and give ourselves a leg up in terms of innovation.
Right, makes sense.
There's some prerequisites to leveraging AI that we'll have to consider. Digital transformation is key. You can't automate things that aren't digital. In Middleton, I think you're doing a pretty good job of this with Laserfiche. You've been digitizing a lot of your records, and that should continue. But as we digitize, we're going to want to introduce sensitive data discovery and data loss prevention policies. We'll want to identify anything that has a social security number in it or something like that that's in our environment, and tag that data with a data loss prevention policy so it cannot exit the environment.
Right.
And then we can start to really experiment with AI, because our sensitive data is protected from being ingested by it. And in that vein, we're announcing another $10,000 net revenue reinvestment in sensitive data protection. We're kicking this off in Danvers this year. The product we purchased to do this with is multi-tenant and scalable. We really focus on those two things because we are a collaborative, and this will be something that's available to the rest of the collaborative as well. In terms of infrastructure, we have laid significant fiber optic infrastructure throughout the North Shore, and we have recently connected to the Regional 911 Center in Middleton. So we have the ability, I've spoken with Chris Ryan over there. He's spending quite a bit leasing fiber optic lines from Comcast right now, and we have the opportunity to substantially reduce his costs by allowing him to leverage our infrastructure. Also, the City of Boston reached out to us through the Regional 911 Center. They have a Boston area public emergency radio network called Baypern, and they use radio backhaul to transmit back to Boston. It's a little unreliable, and it's affected by weather. The fiber is not. So we are on the verge, we're approved. We haven't launched the pilot yet, but we are on the verge of launching a pilot to transmit all of their public emergency radio network to all their repeater sites on the North Shore throughout our fiber optic infrastructure. On the left here, I just included a AI readiness infographic. This is some work we're doing for one of our affiliate organizations, the Mass Cyber Center. Just an example of some of the type of stuff we do. We produce content based on our research and our experience in the collaborative, and the Mass Cyber Center picks that up and publishes it statewide. They have a few times from our work. And so that's the brief presentation, except for some thank yous. I want to thank this board for trusting us and bringing us on.
No,
And-
thank you.
Yeah.
You proved your
thank
worth
you.
right off the bat.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You guys
I
are
want
right
to
on.
thank.
We're coming up on a year.
I want to thank the community of Middleton for trusting you and by extension us. And I'd like to call out specifically Justin Saltzback, Jackie Bresnahan, and Sarah Wood. The clarity of their vision and the quality of their feedback has made this an enjoyable and efficient project for us. So we really like working with this town, and we hope to for quite a while in the future.
That's great to hear.
And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any you have.
I had a question.
Okay.
Yeah, no, seriously, about the 911. You're responsible for the 911?
No.
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 Are you talking about 911 going down today?
No. In general for the town of Middleton. No.
No, they're in
Where
charge
911
of,
calls go.
they're in charge of IT and computer stuff. We're in a,
Right. The 911. that's-
yeah, well, so we're gonna be able to, allow them into our computer system, but we don't have anything, we don't control it.
This is
I do have
stuff
a
coming up.
Well, issue with calling into the police department because I called twice.
Today.
No, a while back. It was
Oh.
Central Street issue stuff twice. And I was routed, and I called the police station, 4424.
Yeah, it goes up there.
No, well, I have my options. I mean, we could do it on the phone now. 1, do this, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So whatever number it was, that I could speak with the person, the on-call, the in-charge, officer in charge, the officer in charge. Press that button, it rings in, someone answers the phone. I'm thinking I'm talking to the Middleton Police Department because when 4424, you have reached the Middleton Police Department if you need blah, 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 1, 2, 3, 4. Did the officer in charge, I got dispatched to New Hampshire, but I didn't know this because no one showed up. So I had called because we had a hot mess going on, and I thought that a report would be a good thing because of the hot mess that was going on. No one showed up, so I kind of thought that maybe you weren't showing up because we know it's a hot mess. So I called again. Still, no one showed up. I said, am I in a queue? What's going on here? And anyway, I called the police station after hours. I talked with someone, and they said, no, you can ask for your report. I went and I saw the chief the next day, and he said, Ann, I'm not looking to give you no excuses, but your call got dispatched to New Hampshire. I clearly said my name, my street, and my phone number. It's a problem, because I would have, if that kid had gotten hit that I was calling about, it would have been quicker to run up the street to the firehouse than that there. So when I saw 911, that's what triggered this, because we do have a problem with calling the police station, because it says you've reached the Middleton Police Department. But I wasn't dispatched to the Middleton Police Department, I was dispatched to New Hampshire.
On my end, I get the wrong address sent to me all the time from them.
It was twice in
Not to
one
make it
day.
any better, but,
But it was twice in one day,
yeah, oh, yeah.
within
I
the
mean,
hour. I'm making you aware that that's
That's a problem.
it's a huge problem.
It's what we
So I
bought
said- so I'm
on,
just-
it's what we signed on to. I mean, they got a high turnover rate up there with people, and it
I
isn't
think-
always,
What I think is that when I called and it said you have reached the Middleton Police Department, nowhere within that cycle did it say you're going to be dispatched to the dispatch center. Do you know? I thought I was actually speaking with the police department because
well, they're supposed to answer.
someone
this
did.
Police dispatch service.
We
you
could
know.
do it now, but I won't do it to you
I'm not
now.
saying
But if we were to
officers don't.
call, I mean, I know we're after hours, but literally I thought I was speaking with the police department. But I wouldn't have known that unless I followed through like I did. I don't know if I'm making it clear that I called twice in one day thinking I was speaking with the police department, and I was not. No one
That's not who
showed
you
up.
talk to. You talk to the dispatch, that's who answers.
Bless your chest.
And, you know, they
3
direct,
o'clock
they
in
either
the
dispatch,
afternoon.
they dispatch a call for, tell, call us what you want, or they notify us that there's someone that wants to talk to us.
I
Mr.
understand
Chair,
what you're saying, but I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. Ray.
I'm going to pass this on to the chairs, but in the interest of the IT gentleman's
Right.
time,
I
or
just
excuse
have
me, the two chiefs, yeah.
Two hopefully quick questions for the IT piece. So, one is if Middleton's vision included like a free Wi-Fi in the public complexes, is that something that would fall under your scope with all the fiber optic that you have?
In the municipal complex?
In the municipal complex, or like in one of the parks, or like whatever happens to the town playground, for example. Like I know some communities have like a free Wi-Fi you can jump onto. I don't know if that would be something that, if Middleton was interested in that, that would be part of your scope or what you do with the collaborative.
Yeah.
Contemplated that at the Flint where we currently have public Wi-Fi. We haven't. I think
Okay, I would
if-
expect to see some of that come out in our interviews as we go through the strategic plan, and if that's a key desire of the community, then that's something that we would.
I would, to be perfectly frank, it's not something we've identified at this time. There might be feedback from some of the department heads or maybe from the board. But at this point, like, we're in nuts and bolts, and we're also, like, I need to know that, like, my staff are gonna have internet in that campus.
Right.
Like, I
Right.
think we're talking like 5 years from now.
This isn't any plan for
Right.
town for the public.
Well, and this is what I was thinking, like, you're talking about strategic plans, like 5 years out or whatever, right? So if the municipal complex has internet that's accessible to town employees, right? Like, you can have in your internet, like, 3 different networks, right, within your house. One might be a administrative only, one might be a, hey, you're in the building, you can use it, right? Like, so, anyway, just a question. But the other question I had was related to, you mentioned a lot about security, and I know there's probably protecting data and access and hacking and, like, that kind of thing, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know as a community member, meeting on a weeknight is difficult for families. We've talked about how, like, there used to be a Zoom option, but that access was sort of shut down because of cyber attacks and things like that. In your scope, is that something that you could facilitate in a safer way so that people from the community could participate in things without, you know, cutting out of their family time, right? To be able to understand what's happening in town, because there are a lot of people who don't know, and it is hard to keep track of things, and then you guys get misinformation and people get upset. And I just thought that if there was a way to do that safely, that may be something that could be part of the
At some point, maybe we may arrive to that, but that's not what this is.
They are in
not
the,
what this
in the new
is.
campus.
In the new
So
campus?
In the new campus, that's part of what we're working
excellent.
on. Short term, this room is not designed for it. It wasn't built for it. So like there are hybrid models that can be embedded into spaces. This room was never built for
So that.
that.
It's an infrastructure in this location sort of issue.
And a resource. Like there's 2 of us here, and that's, you know, so these folks are 1 FTE amongst all of them, and then our help desk. So that's a resource issue in this area, not in their area.
Well, no, I just didn't know if that fell under their scope, because I think as a community, just speaking out loud, I've had lots of people say, like, I wish I could come to that meeting, but I can't. And I know it's we'd like to be more involved, right, like as a community, but it's hard to because you can't necessarily sit for a 4-hour meeting, right, or 3-hour,
We're
whatever.
building it into the new campus, and it's a top tier goal. I mean, Liam and Colby and I have sat in a number of planning strategic meetings. We've tested the product that we're going to use on the new campus, but it's a big investment for the short period of time that we now have left in front of us until we're in the new campus. It's really costly. It's really expensive to invest in the type of technology for how short of a time we're going to be using it.
And is it more of like a firewall issue, or because I mean, like Zoom has, for example, capabilities. Like I have medical appointments on Zoom, right? But they have their own platform of Zoom to
It's
allow.
not a Zoom problem so much as it is an acoustical this room problem,
Okay.
and in other rooms.
So it's not people like dialing in and creating nuisance.
I mean, that still happens too, and like we
Right.
have to monitor it, so it's hard.
to just juggle.
It's a logistical conversation that I'm happy to have with you offline,
No,
but there's a
that's fine.
lot of reasons why we're not doing it, and it's a resource issue more than anything else.
No, and I was just curious again.
Broadcast, and they are all available for later viewing. There's plenty of opportunity to watch and rewatch.
Right. Paul used,
ZBA, Planning Board, School Committee, Masco, us.
Involved, right? Like to understand the dialogue and be able to ask questions. But I mean, I don't want to take any more time, but I just wanted to ask.
Great, thank you. So we can let you guys just finish
Yeah.
and.
Yeah, I think that was about
Was
it.
all the people I saw listed there, was that everybody that works over in Danvers?
Yeah.
For our team, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
That's
is
you guys, yeah, okay.
this is us with the 2 managed services contracts. 5 internal staff, 2 managed services contracts.
You at Town Hall or do you have somewhere else?
No, we're in the electric building.
By the
where
pond,
we
yeah.
have a data center at 2 boroughs. Yeah, so our electric is free because we're in the electric building.
as it should be.
Yeah.
That's a perk. All right, any questions for anybody or anything?
I do not, other than thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.
Thank you for all you
Keep
do.
up the good work.
You saved us once, let's, we appreciate
Yeah,
it, never
let's
forget.
bolster it up so we don't have to worry about that again.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Take a vote now for an acceptance of the bottleneck reduction grant. No?
Annual ambulance write-offs, number 12.
Oh, I'm sorry, yep, the ambulance annual write-offs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief about this one. So to cut to the chase, the number that you're seeing here does not incorporate any numbers from the jail. It is coming in at about 12.9% of what was billed out in fiscal year '21. So overall, with $670,000 billed, $86,000 were found to be non-collectible. So what you're doing tonight for the folks watching at home is just writing off that remaining non-collectible ambulance bills.
And do we have any line of sight to, because I ask this annually, of what these look like? Are these transports of individuals that we've just never heard back from? Are these those that were uninsured? Were these, I've always stated, I think if there's an issue with residents that are having difficulty paying, people, that's a discussion this board should see how we could support. But for anybody else, are we taking any of these to small claims court?
So they're managed by Comstar, and they are incentivized to collect as many as they can, but there are a certain amount, which is what the category this is falling into, where it's folks that are deceased, folks that maybe didn't have any proper identification or provided false identification, people that were from without insurance or from out of town, ones that you just truly, there's no way to really recoup that money, and the resources that you would expend trying to recoup it really doesn't justify.
So I had asked in the past, there's some collections companies that have actually focused specifically on this. FH Can out of North Andover specifically has a unit that focuses on ambulance receivable collections, and what they do is they go beyond what a Comstar does. Comstar obviously goes after some of the lower hanging fruit, but when it becomes difficult, they just walk away. Others What they do is, the collection firm takes it and we would get a percentage of it. So when we have a collectible amount that ComStar is telling us is likely not collectible, when you hand that all over to an agency that manages it, these are dollars we weren't going to get. Any penny we get is kind of gravy.
The bonus, yeah.
And they handle everything from true collections process to, if need be, small claims.
I'll look into it with Chief Lacoste and Finance Director Wood, and if there's an opportunity to even bring in a percentage of this percentage, I'm willing to look into it.
And does this, I think this is, what percentage is this, about 12%? 13. How is that compared,
13.
how does that compare to previous
12.9.
years?
So the more recent years you had prior to this were inflated because it had jail calls were factored into that, and it had kind of compiled over time. I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head, but I want to say my best recollection it was about like 300K or something.
Just me putting this one
So this is what you should expect seeing moving forward if we're going to regularly clean it up rather than just letting it build up over
Do
time.
we have any jail uncollectibles?
Not in 21, but if I had, not a betting man, if I had to guess, in 22 and 23 more than likely. But I'll get an answer on that too.
Okay, thanks.
If there's a visitor to the jail, is that considered, that needs emergency service, is that considered a jail call or not considered a jail call?
I don't know offhand.
I would
I
say
think
no.
because, well, I think it's because it's the same address, it's just coded as such, whether it's in the waiting room and visiting room, or
Right, right.
the lobby or the parking lot or inside the facility. I don't think it gets identified differently.
Identified any different, it's going to the same address.
I don't know, as far as like when we categorize how many calls go to the jail, does that include visitors or not include visitors?
Oh, I would probably, I see what you're saying, yeah.
I'll look into that too, and I'll email all of you.
Thanks.
It's a smaller percent, but it's
Oh,
some.
yeah,
It's
it's
some.
some, yeah.
It's some. Trying to think, I even recall going up there for something to feel well, one of those
Yeah.
calls. They were just waiting to go and visit, like you said. All right,
So we need a vote to write them off, correct?
Yes,
yes, take a motion to write them off.
I'll make a motion to write off the uncollectible debt from the annual ambulance write-offs in the amount of $86,000.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? And I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. All right, 13, the acceptance of the bottleneck reduction grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before you, we have a correspondence from the Commonwealth on June 11th notifying us of the official receipt of the construction funding component of the grant. So once again, a huge thanks to Katrina, who carried the ball and kind of initiated this up until she departed in March. And then a kudos to Paul Goodwin for collaborating with us to continue on through to this phase of the application. So in total, we received $166,961 and change towards construction funding, as you may recall, about this time last year in conversations with some folks from the neighborhood. There was, similar to tonight, a sense of urgency, like, let's do this now, let's do this now. And the directive that we had provided from my office was, rather than expend town funds, let's see if we can get some grant money. And so it took some patience, and a huge thank you to the folks in the neighborhood. But I'd much rather be spending the Commonwealth's money than our money. So a big win for us. So if you all could just this evening vote to accept those funds. We do have a notice to proceed that we are notified is going to be issued for September. But where we're trying to avoid the school season, we did reach out to them and ask if they could bump that up, and they are willing to accommodate. So it looks like it's going to hit for late July, early August instead.
Nice.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the acceptance of the bottleneck reduction grant in the amount of $166,961.
Thank you.
It's 71 cents.
71 cents.
A second?
I'll second.
All right, Jeff seconds, so we have a motion and a second, and I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Justin. Good job getting that. Cool. All right, now, lastly here, we have the Town Administrator Annual Evaluation Process discussion.
Sure. So I just wanted to open up this conversation with the anniversary of the cyber incident. Also comes the anniversary of me coming to town. So we've almost come up on 1 year at this point. I just wanted to offer up to the board what my intent is to do is to just offer a 4-page narrative highlighting certain categories of accomplishments that we've had under my administration collectively as a team throughout the year. And I would also like to pinpoint a couple areas where I personally would like to focus a little bit more in year 2, where I feel like maybe I could have dug a little bit deeper or improved. So I think all in all, it's for the sake of growth, it's a good process, and I look forward to going through it. So I'll submit that to the board in advance, potentially if you'd like to review it and then respond with the instrument that the town of Middleton already has in place to rank my performance through your eyes, and then I believe Jackie will take each of your individual contributions and combine them into
Compiles
one
it,
for composite for review on July 9th, if that works. Yep.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Is there we don't have any update announcements? You have an announcement?
Last Wednesday, the Middleton stream team did some cleaning up and maintenance of canoe landings, and we're able to accomplish a lot more than usual because Emily of the Danvers office of Morgan Stanley brought a whole bunch of people to help in that duty. So thank you to Emily and to Morgan Stanley. It was their volunteer month, so they were looking for projects to
Nice.
get involved
I also
in the
saw some
community.
nice pictures of our own Costa participating in that.
Involved. Wonderful.
I do have something to,
sure,
Rick. So I just want to say a very special thank you to Justin and Jackie for making yesterday's ceremony go off without a hitch. You guys did a wonderful job. They really made us look good, just so you know. I mean, we got to take that one.
Well, the best thing they did, though, was to schedule it for Monday instead of today or tomorrow.
But thank you. You did a wonderful job. Everything went off without a hitch, and I think it was just a really nice ceremony.
I got a couple emails mentioning how well it was, that it was quite a good time and how well it was put together. That would be you guys.
I'm sorry Jackie's not here, but
I'll make sure she watches it.
All right, that's
that's
it.
all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourned.
So moved.